O'Reilly.
You've got questions? O'Reilly Auto Parts has answers. Need a pro you can trust? We've got that too. No matter what you need, our professional parts people have the training and expertise to help you do things right. Deep automotive knowledge. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
It's the left versus the right. In the right corner, it's heavyweight king Curtis Sliwa. In the left corner, it's Anthony Weiner. It's a 77 WABC debate. Heavyweight slugfest. On New York's news and talk station, 77 WABC.
Welcome to another episode of Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on your left, Curtis Sliwa on your right. It's Saturday, the election's on Tuesday, but you don't have to wait because we're going to have our predictions about what to expect, and we're never wrong. Well, we're going to do that towards the end of the show. We have too much ground to cover here. First, should we do a quick postmortem on your beloved New York Yankees?
Well, as you notice, I'm not wearing my red sateen jacket. I am in mourning. I'm wearing all black, the WABC pullover jersey. So I will sit my shiva for the next 8 days, and then before you know it, it's February, return of the pitchers and catchers to Tampa for the Yankees, Port St. Lucie for the Mets, if Florida is still on the map, if it isn't blown away by another hurricane. So there is hope.
Well,
Keep
you know
hope alive.
You know what happens the first day of spring training? They start practicing the most basic play, which is the pitcher getting off the mound and running to first base. That last game was typical New York Yankees.
Yep.
They slug the bejesus out of the ball, but they don't do good fundamental baseball, anything else. It's only so long you can survive like that.
Well, you know, to the Dodgers' credit, we didn't realize, but Freddie Freeman not only had the ankle injury, but apparently he had broken a rib.
Yeah.
And his own father had said, you can't keep playing through the playoffs in the World Series. He goes, we've gotten this far, I got to play. He was clearly the all-star. He almost had 5 home runs in 5 games.
He was channeling Kirk Gibson.
Right, Judge made that unbelievable catch against him, crashing into the barrier, and then later on, he can't even catch a fly ball. He hadn't made an error all year, and that started the downward turn. But it's right, Yankee baseball is home runs, no fundamentals. If they don't hit home runs, they don't win.
And if you have a situation where, and we don't want to make this a sports podcast, but where like one of your sluggers, like Judge, goes into a slump at the wrong time, suddenly you're left. I have to say, overall, the playoffs were not very good. The Mets series with the Dodgers, all blowouts, a lot of defensive errors and base running errors. I think it wasn't great, but congratulations to our listeners in Los Angeles. But here's something you've got to explain to me this.
Sure.
A big championship game, a big series ends, and a city bursts into flames. And it doesn't have to be big cities. Sometimes you'll have, in Oklahoma will beat Nebraska one year. They're tipping over buses. They're lighting things. Can you explain to me the psychology behind rioting when you win and destroying the city that you claim to be so proud of?
Well, L.A. is unique. It's the city of angels, but they got defrocked a long time ago. They riot in some area of L.A., which is a vast area, L.A. County, almost every day. They're raiding a 7-Eleven, they're just like locusts through the cornfield. So for them, it's just another day. Obviously, more people gathered for the celebration downtown. But this is what they do in L.A.
But this isn't just an L.A. phenomenon. I tell you where it's not a phenomenon.
Yes.
We don't do it in New York.
No.
We don't light stuff on fire when we're really happy about the Rangers.
I think we're so used to winning. That's
I
the
don't
problem.
know. And it's not just, sometimes it's your college town that'll have the same thing. To me, I've never understood the psychology of, I'm so happy. I'm going to go out into the streets and light a bus on fire. It makes no sense to me.
Well, not only L.A., but in all those years that the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan were winning, you go to the North Shore of Chicago, they would have riots, there would be looting. It's
lots of play. Hey, when Edmonton lost, I think it was Edmonton lost to Boston in 2011 in the Stanley Cup. Edmonton had riots, but at least then they lost. Okay, they were very disappointed. This I just don't understand. But
I continue to sit shiva, and more so because we didn't get rid of Aaron Boone. Management gave him, thumbs up. Cashman is staying another year. And Steinbrenner, he's not like his dad. I want a DNA check.
I think you're right about that. By the way, if you want to invest in a stock, invest in Juan Soto. There's going to be a bidding war for him.
And your guy wants him.
Both, I think they both do. It's because one thing you don't, when you get into money-based machismo of guys, and that's what professional sports, these owners, they're tough guys. They don't, and I think it's be tough to Steinbrenner to let him go. So I think, if you are...
But let me tell you something. If your Mets get it, if Steve Cohen gets him, a guy who should be in jail for insider trader information, but he's got the money. Remember, Soto instantly becomes the star of the Mets. Soto can never be the star of the Yankees as long as Judge is there.
That's a good point. But Soto, with his agent, they just want the money. I don't think he doesn't seem like he cares where it comes from. But that was just a little appetizer because you need to clear our palate a little bit. So much politics the last week of the campaign. And if I would have told you that the word we'd all be saying the last week is garbage, you would probably be surprised. When we went on the air on Saturday, we previewed the Sunday rally. We both agreed it was an interesting thing for Trump to be doing. I didn't think it was going to mean that much. And afterwards, the talk was not about Trump. It was about a comedian making fun of Puerto Rico, our own Sid Rosenberg, who we had a beep on our own station for 4 times in 4 minutes. A terrible day for Trump. Don't you agree?
No, absolutely. First, let's start with the king of profanity now, of all profanity, as dubbed by the old gray lady of the New York Times, our own Sid Rosenberg, one of the initial speakers. First, it was that comedian who was a bomb. Then it was Scott Lebedo who did his picture and gave a little speech. Only one F-bomb, by the way.
Well, but the thing is, his big thing was giving someone the finger, and that doesn't show up well in print. So
I know, but that was the hors d'oeuvres. The entree was number 3 speaker, Sid Rosenberg, who raised the roof in terms of profanity, so much so he dominated the discourse on all talk TV programs, the old gray lady, and I kept saying, wait a second. The politics is different, but if he had been Lenny Bruce, who dropped so many F-bombs and was a hero because he broke those obscenity rules, he went to jail, they arrested him. It's the nature of the politics. So if you're on the right side, according to whoever's critiquing you, you're a hero. If you're on the wrong side, according to whoever's critiquing you, in this case, the New York Times, you're a hero.
100% wrong. It's context. Things that you can get away with saying in the comedy club or might be honored as free speech in the comedy club, political rallies are about getting your guy elected. If you're doing things that either cast a bad light on your guy or that someone has to apologize for or even that they're talking about you the next day, that's a loss.
But understand this, Anthony. It's clear singularly Team Trump feels they can win this election with those white men who have not graduated college. They feel they'll get enough of them, and in their world, in their vernacular, real men curse. You got to understand this. That's the focus for Team Trump. Team Harris is, we got to get the women's vote. We get the women's vote, we will be the next president.
What's the tactical thinking of insulting Puerto Rico?
Well, that wasn't in the books. As you know.
It was in the teleprompter, and it was approved.
I understand, but that was not in the books because clearly, as you know, a lot of Republicans have put a lot of time in to develop Latino support amongst men, black support amongst men, and obviously Jewish support, even to the point of almost getting Dershowitz to say he's going to vote for Trump. But a lot of that can be undone, as you know, by any surrogate. We've seen Mark Cuban done a lot of damage to Harris. I don't think it'll cost her 1 vote. I don't think ultimately the comedian costs him 1 vote. I think the issues are very clear. To me, economy, how much does it cost to live, migrants, and abortion.
I don't know.
Those are the 4 key
I think,
issues.
Here's one of the ways you can measure whether something is a gaffe. Is whether the other team puts it in their ads. And Donald Trump is making nonstop content, and now his surrogates are making nonstop content for Kamala Harris. I'll give you an example. When he said that what's going to happen, the whole country is going to turn into Detroit. They made that into ad targeting young men as if they attacked the Detroit Lions. When he insulted Philadelphia, they did the same thing. Now they've attacked Puerto Rico. Now they're making it young men. They see this as like a sporting event, what team they're on. And they've made it very clear that Donald Trump's not on their team. Here's what I would say. There is no way, if you are looking at the polling and you're trying to figure out your path to victory and late deciders and who's going to make the difference, the week before the election, you do not want to be talking about floating piles of garbage being the same as Puerto Rico. You don't want to be talking about some guy that cursed at all Democrats and said they're all degenerates or whatever it is Sid said. I think it was a complete debacle.
But remember, the comedian, who we don't even know who he is not at the level of a Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, star of Shark Tank, a liberal progressive Democrat. He's established the credentials, even hinted he might run for the presidency, if not this time around, obviously not in the future. But what he said about Republican women and Donald Trump.
Yeah, is he wrong? He said that Donald Trump never surrounds himself with principled, smart women. Can you name one?
You would argue you actually want to be Mark Cuban too on this?
No, I just because what you just said is not what he said.
Right.
He said that you never see Donald Trump. He says you never see Donald Trump standing with smart, strong women. Name one.
His wife is not smart and strong.
She's never standing with him. Never standing with him. And by the way,
she was just there.
And
what are you talking about?
By the way, if that's your best case, is her who disagrees with him.
Who chose South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley to be the U.S. representative in the United Nations, even though Kelly and the generals were opposed to that.
She's not standing with Donald Trump.
Well, yes, she is.
No, she's not.
She's not standing with
I haven't
Harris.
seen her anywhere.
I don't see her next to Liz Cheney with Harris.
Donald Trump is never seen with smart, principled women. Dumb lawyers, dumb political consultants, idiots coming up with conspiracy theories that 9/11 was an inside job. This is who he hangs out with.
Yeah, even though you're doubling down, Mark Cuban is doubling back and retrenching from what he said there. That is as dumb as Donald Trump himself calling Harris an idiot and dumb.
Which he does every day.
Understood. And that's wrong. And what Mark Cuban said was wrong. And why does suddenly the intelligence factor of women enter into the discussion?
I think what Mark Cuban was saying is there's a reason why Donald Trump has such contempt for women. He never has any strong women around him to tell him to shut the F up and smack him on his head and say, stop telling us what you think is right for us.
I would suggest to you that the President of the United States has contempt for the Vice President when she's having a rally right outside of the White House and he's calling Trump supporters garbage.
Let me ask you.
Garbage.
What do you think? Who called Trump supporters garbage? Joe Biden did.
Yes.
Okay, so you think that you should hold the candidate responsible for what their surrogates say?
Well, remember, Vice President Harris said she wouldn't change anything about the Biden administration and her administration.
Okay, but I'm saying that you would hold Kamala Harris responsible for what Joe Biden said. I think that's fair. I think that surrogates. I think surrogates should.
She renounced that. No, and rightfully so.
But I mean, you're saying for weeks. All right. Well, that brings us to the third garbage thing, which is rather than let this thing go away, and by the way, I'd point out one of the rare times that the Trump campaign said, we don't know, we're sorry about this comedian.
Of course.
They ran away from him. So the whole idea that this was a strategy.
They didn't run away from Sid, right?
I don't know. Let's wait and see.
The new Lenny Bruce.
Let's wait and see.
But remember, all of this is noise. I don't think there's one person who hasn't made up their mind now that's going to let all this noise interfere with ultimately what their choice is.
That's ridiculous.
By November
There's
5th.
No voters at the last minute? No last-minute voters?
Think so.
Come on, every campaign has last-minute voters.
They are getting blitzed by ads nonstop, and it's not just television now and radio. You go open up your Facebook account, boom, 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 boom. You can't escape it. I just really think it always comes down to four issues. The Achilles heel for Republicans, it always is abortion, because women are the most important vote now. And the other three, not looking too good for Harris: the economy, the inflation, and the migrant issue. So it's going to be those that determine the outcome.
We're going to have our predictions, but I'll tell you, the temperament is a thing. Likability is a thing.
Yep.
He's liked less than she is. And now a lot of people, about 20% of his voters last time, said, I don't like him, but I voted for him anyway because leadership turns out to be a more important thing. But I disagree with you. I think that there is a leading bit of people that vote early, which is now more and more and more and more. And then there's the stragglers who do decide the last possible moment. If that didn't happen, there's no way that campaigns would devote so much to get out the vote, so much to knocking on doors, so much to counting who's in and who's not. Last-minute voters, and also there's churn in the electorate. Remember, there's 20% people in this election who were not around, either hadn't been registered or hadn't been whatever it is.
And they tend to be younger because they've qualified to vote for the first time.
Right, and a lot of times,
they will lean Democrat, yes.
But not this time.
Right.
Younger voters is one of those big questions we're going to have come
Correct.
Tuesday night about winds up happening. But what I can tell you, though, is the way Donald Trump is prosecuting his last week of the campaign, climbing into a garbage truck. I mean, you can't pick a better. It's like Mike Dukakis all over again. Climbs into it and then leans out. By the way, spray painted with that orange paint on his face. I do not understand. Someone's got to talk to him or get him a pro or something. Like, what are you doing? He has an orange vest on that matches perfectly the Oompa Loompa. So he climbs into the truck, almost falls over because he's an old man. Almost falls over, and then he does his photo op leaning out the window answering questions where he says, he's asked naturally, what about the comedian's comments? Well, I've never heard of him. I don't know who he is. And then they drive in circles on a tarmac. I tell you, Curtis, I've been in politics a while. You've been in politics a while. Would you ever imagine this would be the closing week of the campaign? You put your candidate in a garbage truck and have him drive in circles?
Because if you believe your path to victory is through white males who have not graduated college, it's perfect. McDonald's one weekend, driving a garbage truck the next, after Trump's supporters have been called garbage by the President of the United States. It's perfect strategy. Just like Harris has the perfect strategy, as much as my colleagues malign her. Look, she's not as adept as Donald Trump in dealing with issues. He's lived it for years. He talks about it nonstop. So what they've done is hey, you're happy, you're smiley, you're likable, come out, talk about issues that you're strong in, don't delve into questionable areas, and you have a pathway to victory.
And not as something else. The things that she says in her free or earned media match what they're saying in the commercials. That's what you want. People criticize her. I'm one of them for being so cautious. Every answer seems like she's scrolling through like the Terminator. What is the answer I'm supposed to give? You got to give her credit. She does not make gaffes. You're not seeing her come. Now, you're seeing policies that people might disagree with. That's perfectly fair. But she's not stepping in it. She's not talking about floating piles of garbage or anything like that.
Look, I would say to both candidates, they are running their race. They are running their strongest races, and it ultimately will be.
Trump cannot. Trump does not want that conversation that came out of MSG. He can't possibly.
These are strong. These are strong moments for him, and they're strong moments for her. Understanding she's only been in it 3 months. She didn't think she'd be running for the presidency. You know, you have to prepare for this for months and months and months. She chose a vice president that ends not being the biggest help in the world.
Wait, hold on a minute. You're saying that Donald Trump is more experienced politician than she is? She's been doing this her entire life.
Are you kidding? Come on. Donald Trump is giving these speeches. He's traveled the world. He's met with
You've
world
heard
leaders.
Donald Trump's speeches? He's talking about batteries and windmills and Hannibal Lecter, and he's talking about how he won California last time. He is out to lunch. She is a studied politician.
Harris says, I grew up in a middle-class family.
Correct.
We can almost lip-sync her.
Right, because every word that she says, has been poll-tested. That's what a politician.
I understand
I feel that.
So it's refreshing to have Trump, who talks off the cuff, and then you have Harris, who's in her box. Now, it'll still be up to the people to make the determination, and I believe, like 2016 and 2020, it'll be white women independents who ultimately will choose the next
I got to
president.
tell you, you talked about the different issues. The polls show that on the economy, Trump still leads, but now it's narrow because he's been saying crazy things. On immigration, he still leads comfortably, but immigration's, who knows if that's still going to, he tries to make every issue about immigration. But this issue of temperament, this issue of who do you want in charge, and it ties into this play for women at the end, going back to your base. Like you said, Trump is going back to, I don't know who these people are, these non-college educated white men who seem to like the idea of their candidate driving in a garbage truck wearing an orange vest. I don't know who that is. But you're right. And I mean,
Well, likability, remember, we always said before it was the key to victory with the electorate. They may not like your ideas, but if you're the kind of guy you could have a beer with.
Right, to have
Bush
a beer
43 was the perfect. The guy couldn't chew gum and think at the same time. But who would you rather have a beer with, Kerry or Bush 43, right?
Right.
It was coming down. Obama, the smooth operator, right? People wanted to be with Obama. Clinton, they wanted to be with him. Bush 41, no. They said, I wouldn't have a beer with Bush 41. So this is the time where Trump sort of defeats all of that because there are people out there that if, let's say, God forbid, Harris was on life support, they would vote for Harris over Trump because they just hate Trump. So it's like there's no real middle ground here. You either hate him or you love him. And that can be to Harris's benefit, ultimately, when all the votes are counted.
I think that's probably right. And when we get back, we're going to talk about something that both whoever wins this race is going to benefit from, a white-hot economy. On the other side, this is Left versus Right. Be too sure to come back and join us.
It's the left versus the right. Now, to the Bernard McGurk Studios, it's a 77 WABC debate. The melee in the metropolis. 77 WABC.
So welcome back to Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on your left, Curtis Sliwa on your right. If you miss any part of the program, get it as a podcast. Also, tune in all week. And if you're going to be with us on Tuesday, almost throughout the evening and afternoon, we're going to have special programming around the election. We'll be here till the bitter end. You just heard me on my show talk about what my predictions are. We're going to do predictions here towards the end of the show. But before we talk about the economy...
Now, let me ask you a question, the bitter end. The way votes are tallied in some of the states... It could be days, maybe even weeks later.
Probably not. Probably not.
So are you guys going to be on the air all through that?
No, so probably not. Actually, I just did my podcast, The Middle Unplugged, is about this. Now, because there are so many people voting early.
Yes.
And because and Republicans too, they finally got the memo, ignore your idiot that's in charge of your party and start voting early.
Right.
Now, so much of that is going to be ready, prepared, and counted.
In most states.
Everywhere but Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, which is not nothing. Those are two very important states. Yes. But in those states, the counting will not have begun. But in every other state, for example, Roethlisberger in Georgia, Republican governor, Republican secretary of state, they said by Wednesday every last bit, everything except the military will be in.
Okay.
They'll have a count.
But I think also with Wisconsin, they have a unique factor where you could register the day of the election. So I could easily see poll watchers there, probably Republicans.
It's the left versus the right. It's a 77 WABC debate. The melee in the metropolis. 77 WABC.
So welcome back to Left versus Right. Anthony Weiner on your left, Curtis Sliwa on your right. We'll be here until Vinny Badunio at the top of the hour. And then on Tuesday, on Election Day, programming back-to-back on 77 WABC News Radio. You can get opinion. We'll have information from Noam Layton and everything else. The results will be coming in. I don't know fast. I don't know if they're slow. Be sure to tune in for that. So here it is. This is the prediction part. A lot of the folks who tuned into my show might have heard a little bit of this. Why don't you get us started? Let's say it is Wednesday afternoon. Tell us where you think it'll be, whether you think that we'll have a winner, who you think it will be, what you think people will be talking about, like, oh, now we know that, ... Take it away.
Well, number one, here we are, again, not all that different a place than 2016 or 2020. The consultants have made tens of millions of dollars on both sides, and they really haven't nudged the meter. So I truly believe the only thing that has changed, and only because I'm privy to it, listening to both sides, is that finally Trump has given up being obstinate about how you vote. Before, it was you vote only one time only, even though he voted on paper like so many people do in Florida. You vote, you go to your polling locations, even if it's 50 foot of snow out, you vote on Election Day. I think that cost Republicans votes. The Democrats are very adept at using all the tools available, much better than Republicans. For the first time, I've seen an actual emphasis, get out, early vote, especially on the first day. Absentee ballots, if you have any idea that you may not be able to vote early voting or on the day, get your absentee ballot. So I think that's the difference. And I think because the RNC has devoted some resources to that, I think ultimately when all the votes are counted, that will give Trump the victory because he actually used the tools in the box instead of ignoring them in 2020. He was at heart, no, 1,000 times no. And whereas the Democrats, they really have to hope that these independent white women break for them as they broke for Trump in 2016 against Hillary.
Yeah, so I feel you. So you think that Trump wins, and you think fairly comfortably?
No. I think, again, we're talking razor-sharp margins. And I think Jill Stein, again, could be the upsetting element. Nobody pays attention, but 1%, as we saw in 2000 with Nader, 1% with Jill Stein in 2016 was the difference. Why wouldn't it be the difference now?
Yeah. Well, listen, here's what I have to say. I mean, first of all, I disagree with you a little bit about the race changed a lot when Joe Biden got out, Kamala Harris got in. At that point, the Democrats were losing by 5-6 points. So she got in with a losing hand. She exploded on the scene, and I think that one of the things people are going to be talking about when she wins the election, which I think she will, is how flat-footed the Republicans were when she got in the race. It took a long time for them to get their sea legs. You know, you want to define someone else before you get to define them. That first almost month or so, no one laid a glove on her. No, they couldn't figure out what to say. They made fun of her laugh and everything else. The convention was a complete success. She raised literally $1 billion in those first few days.
And remember, they kept talking Biden. Trump, you couldn't get him off Biden. Hey, Biden's gone. You left him on that debate stage at CNN.
So
you should have never had that early debate.
Yeah, so I think that there's going to be a lot of talk about that on Wednesday. Yeah. How they kind of shot themselves in the foot by not really being ready. Okay, there is a chance this guy.
It took him a month. It's like the ocean liner trying to turn in the Hudson River.
Right, and
whereas the Democrats were like PT 109. Boy, they were
ready.
Into it.
We were ready to go. I mean, here's an important thing for our listeners to remember that right now, if the polls say that it's tied, if Biden, I almost did it myself, if Harris gets +2 more than in each state, the polls were right. The polls don't say that's the number. They say it's going to be in this 4 or 5 point range. I think that she overperforms among a couple of groups, and all she has to do is overperform those groups, and every one of the swing states tips. If she overperforms among blacks, gets back to Biden plus a couple of points because she's black, then suddenly you're not only doing better in Georgia, but you're also doing better in Pennsylvania. I've heard some people say, she's going to win Pennsylvania, lose Wisconsin, win Nevada, lose Georgia. That's not the way. If there's something going on in the electorate, women, for example, go from 54% to 58% or something like that, I think that's what likely to happen. I think that what's going to wind up happening is it's going to be very, very close in the popular vote. It's going to be 1 or 2 points in the popular vote, but I think it is going to turn out to be Harris +2 or so in all these swing votes.
Well, remember, hate drives a vote. So in 2016, both sides hated one another, Hillary and Trump. Likewise, in 2020, Biden and Trump. Both sides were propelled by hate. People don't really hate Harris because they don't know Harris. They know what they're supposed to say. So I know when they really hate somebody and this is what I'm supposed to say. So I think that is the most interesting factor is she is not well known. She is not hated as much as you hear the rhetoric. I don't get that sense.
Well, look, I think, one of the things, and I pointed this out to you a couple of times, this take. In 2016, it was a referendum on who do we hate more, and we hated Hillary more.
Yes.
In 2020, it was a referendum on Trump, and they said, we just don't like you that much. And even then, it wasn't that. It was pretty close.
Although, when I looked at the analytics, where Biden did better and I think secured the victory, was he got 5% more of the white men who did not graduate college.
Well, that's the point. Harris, it was presumed when people were arguing, is Harris better than Biden? One of the things people said, yes, she might get more black votes, more young votes, but we're going to lose this kind of Biden, Scranton, Joe vote. She's been doing increasingly well among that cohort of voters, the non-college educated older voter, almost as well as Biden had been done. Look, if you just recreate the Biden coalition, that's enough to get you a win, and I think that's what I think when we're here on next week, when we're doing recaps on Wednesday, and I do think it's going to be done pretty quickly. I think they're going to count these votes pretty quickly. I think it is going to be Harris by a couple of points in every swing state.
Well,
and it's gonna
remember,
be
they
300
both
some
say
odd.
they're the agents of change. Neither of them are the agents of change.
Well-
we know what Trump did. He's saying he's going to do a lot of the same stuff. Vice President Harris is part of this administration.
I know,
it's
but
not
Trump-
really change.
Trump he wants to break everything. Nothing he ever does is conventional. He says and does things. Have you ever heard of someone bad-mouthing the United States? Do you remember when Reverend Wright said, "God damn America," once? Barack Obama had to give a whole speech and devote
But he never heard it. Remember, Barack Obama was there 10 years.
I know,
Never
but-
heard him say these things.
Right, but it was such a big issue.
Yes.
He had to give a speech repudiating him. Donald Trump calls us a cesspool, a pile of garbage, a garbage can. Can I say shits? He poops on this country all the time, and no one seems to care.
Look, he came with the garbage truck in the final days of the campaign to clean it up.
Exactly.
You can't say he wasn't there to clean it up.
So, as we say, so you think that Biden, I keep doing that, that Trump wins with the 270
I
something.
think because when people have two choices, one, that they don't necessarily like completely because they are the free agents out there. They don't necessarily like Trump. And then they have Harris, who they don't really know. Sometimes you go with the person you know, warts and all, than you do with the person that you don't know.
So we all think it's tied because the polls have been telling us for a month it's tied.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. What do you think about the idea that the pollsters always seem to miss when Biden is on the ballot? They seem to miss. I keep doing that. When Trump is on the ballot, they seem to, is this one old demented guy or another? When Trump is on the ballot, they seem to undercount his votes. Do you think that might happen again? And he'll once
think
again?
they've
Because he
tried-
overperformed against Biden in 2020.
Right.
He lost, but he overperformed.
I think they've tried to compensate now. They learned with Hillary he was 6 points behind. Biden last poll said he was 7 points behind, and obviously it turned into be a knuckle dragger. I think they've somehow compensated because they're all at the same level.
That makes me nervous.
They're all at the same
That
level.
hurting among pollsters. There's one poll, and actually it may come out today on Saturday. There's one pollster, a woman named Ann Seltzer. She polls in Iowa, and she doesn't do that. She says, if you say you're going to vote, I'm just going to call. I'm not going to weight anything. I'm just going to, I mean, like they wait for, I think, age, but they don't wait for college education. They don't try to put a finger on the scale.
Right.
They just say, if you say you're a likely voter, I'm going to go out and count. And what she saw in her poll that she did in June was that Harris had blown by Trump because of enthusiasm. Her people suddenly, now that was earlier, that was when she just got into the race.
She saved the party.
Right, and people who say that they're enthusiastic today, more people say on the Democratic side, look, Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing in my party. I've got it. I mean, a lot of people would vote for this table over Donald Trump. And so you wonder if maybe the pollsters, if they miss that. And by the way, that is one of the errors that they could make. If they assume that of the Trump voters, 70% of them make it to the poll and only 63% of them make it to the poll, and of Harris voters, they assume 70% and 74% make it to the poll, suddenly they're off by a lot.
Yeah, but I still think when we look at all the ungodly obscene amounts of money that have been spent by both sides, we're pretty much back where we were in 2016 and 2020.
It could be.
So for all the prognosticators, the lobbyists who made tens of millions of dollars, it may turn out that once again, they were all wrong.
Well, I want to say the one thing that people forget about pollsters is as much you can look at the techniques, look at the script, look at what kind of balancing they did, they're motivated by not wanting to be wrong. So they could be just hurting to a tie, so no one could say you didn't.
No, I think one thing we can clearly say, regardless of who wins or loses, we will remain a divided country.
Yeah. Now that's the part that makes your guy just a real bad player. It used to be when the new president was inaugurated, he had a 65%, almost 70% approval rating because people rallied around the new guy. Handshakes were had, congratulatory calls were made, concession speech were made, and we came together as a country. Your guy is such a self-interested jackass. He has ruined that in our country, and we need to get back to that.
Well, remember, he was down in the polls amongst Republicans. They already had christened DeSantis or Nikki Haley as the new candidate of the Republican Party, and yet he was able to overcome all of them.
Yeah, but the guy doesn't have the. If he loses, should he say I lost and congratulate the winner?
He never loses.
By the way,
Remember,
he
Vince Lombardi said, right? Vince Lombardi went to Fordham University, like Trump did, like Cuomo did. It said, no such thing as
somebody should ask the question. He has now said in so many states, I actually won the state. I would say,
yeah.
did you lose any states?
No.
He said in California this week. He said in New Mexico.
Remember, he is a Presbyterian who was raised under the power of positive thinking. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who says you got to be positive even at a time of doom and gloom.
I heard, someone heard you say that on the show last week. And the guy works in my building, and he says, is that the way Curtis calls someone a liar? He says they think positively?
Well, remember that same Dr. Norman Vincent Peale went down to West Virginia and said to all the Protestants, you cannot vote for JFK. He'll be answerable to the Pope. And guess what? The mostly Protestants in West Virginia didn't vote for Hubert Humphrey in the primary. Yeah. They voted for JFK.
Well, let me ask you, now that they've turned off the microphones and turned off the cameras for our YouTube show.
Yes.
In your heart of hearts, do you think most of the guys and gals who have programs here at 77 WABC, they're actually rooting for Harris because it'd make better content for 4 years?
Oh, it would make better content because now every time you question a Trump, if he's president, you're going to be considered a sellout, a traitor, a Judas. It's always bad. Look, the careers of Rush Limbaugh, of Sean Hannity, of Mark Levin were made when their guy didn't get elected.
Correct.
They didn't.
And MSNBC never saw better ratings than when Trump was in office.
When they could attack Barack Obama morning, noon, and night, their ratings soared. Now, just imagine if McCain had won or Romney had won. They weren't the biggest fans of them, but it's not the same.
Also, outrage, being victim, it's a powerful force when you're doing opinion, right? Saying, hey, that's great. And by the way, one of the challenge that you always have when you win elections is the people that want to repeal Obamacare always show up way more than the people who say, oh, I got a nice new thing called Obamacare. And I think that's the case, too. I think that if it does turn out that Trump wins, I'm going to be the happy one around here.
Right, but you need a heel in anything in life. Same thing. If you have a heavyweight fight, you need a heel. If you had two heroes, nobody's going to come. Likewise, if you're in talk radio and you're a conservative talk radio station, you need a heel for the next 4 years. That would be Harris. You can't make Trump a heel or you'll be ostracized.
Another thing that Trump gives talk radio is when people say, oh, he broke convention, he broke tradition. Well, we love stuff like that because the same old narrative gets tired after a while. Someone going to Arlington Cemetery and punching a staffer, that's the kind of stuff that can get people talking for days. But we're going to find out soon enough.
Trump was great for talk radio, and I predict that in the future, he will probably do his own talk radio program or podcast.
Well, I'm not sure Truth Social has turned out. Well, it's turned out okay for him. He soaked a lot of people.
I can easily see that. I mean,
It could be. I think they have programs like that in prison, so he might actually get a chance.
I know, but if he becomes president, that thought is over.
Well, no, here's the perfect scenario. Harris gets elected president.
Right.
We here in ABC, our ratings continue to soar. That we're the top-rated radio show around.
Oh, they would then, absolutely.
And we get plenty of content of trials with Donald Trump.
Or Donald on the Rock, even for a week, Rikers Island for a week. I mean, our ratings would go through the roof.
Well, I want to thank you, Curtis. I love listening to your stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm ready for this to be over. I'm ready to get to the next thing. I don't want to do any. I'm done getting outraged by garbage.
Well, to all of our colleagues, and let me suggest, having been through this 35 years now, it's easier to become number one as we are in the nation now than to stay number one. Once the election is over, once it's settled by, let's say, January 20th, a new president is sworn in, you better start getting creative again because in order to stay number one, we can't just live off of presidential politics and talk.
This has been Anthony Weiner on the left, Curtis Sliwa on the right. One of the reasons we're number one. Take it away, Vinny Madunio.